Marguerite's Fountain. Benjamin lived at the bottom of the tallest steeple in the cathedral yard. There was a little gap in the sturdy stone. It had been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. Marguerite lived next to the little fountain. All day and all night the sparkling drops danced in the fountain pool. Every day Benjamin watched Marguerite dancing around the fountain. He longed to be friends with her, but Benjamin was shy and didn't dare. So Marguerite danced alone. Then one day, someone was dancing with Marguerite. His name was Randolph. His fur was dark and glossy, and his eyes were as black as oil. Randolph wanted to have the little fountain for himself. "You are the most beautiful dancer I have ever known," he told Marguerite. "You have a beautiful voice." So Marguerite danced for Randolph and sparkled for him. But he was lying. Benjamin wanted to tell Marguerite the truth, but Randolph was big and strong. Benjamin was small and scared. So he said nothing. But one day, Randolph stopped telling Marguerite she was a graceful dancer. "You're making me dizzy with all that spinning," he shouted. Then he stopped telling her that she had a beautiful voice. "Be quiet," he shouted. "I want to listen to the sound of my fountain." "Your fountain?" gasped Marguerite. Randolph twirled his thin mustache and laughed. "Ha ha ha! It is my fountain now," he said. "You have to find somewhere else to live. The sewer is empty. You can live there." Benjamin watched Marguerite creep away from her little fountain. Marguerite no longer sparkled and danced. She curled up in the old sewer alone. "I am the king of the world!" Randolph laughed, marching around the fountain. "I wish I was strong and brave," sighed Benjamin. Then he had an idea. Benjamin crept into the deepest drain. He ran through the dripping, smelly pipes. It was dark and scary. There were loud gurgling noises all around him. Shadows flickered on the walls like huge monsters. He ran along narrow ledges. Once he nearly fell, but he kept going, and at last he found what he was looking for. Next morning, the little fountain was silent and still. "Work!" shouted Randolph. Nothing happened. "What is wrong with my fountain?" Randolph roared. Benjamin was standing by the drain. "The fountain is missing Marguerite," he said. "You have to bring her back." Randolph ran to the sewer and dragged poor Marguerite out. Her fur was muddy and her whiskers were bent. Randolph waited. But the fountain was still and silent, just like before. "You lied to me!" Randolph shouted at Benjamin. Benjamin's paws were shaking, but he hid them behind his back. "The fountain is unhappy because Marguerite is unhappy," he told Randolph. "You have to be kind to her." Randolph growled and grumbled, but he wanted the fountain to work more than anything. So he helped Marguerite clean her fur. He straightened her whiskers. He told her that she was beautiful. He gave her good things to eat. But Marguerite did not smile or sing or dance, and the little fountain was silent and still. "You lied to me!" Randolph shouted again. Benjamin was so frightened his little tail was shaking. Marguerite looked at Benjamin. She could not bear to see Randolph scare him. "There is a little wheel at the bottom of the deepest drain," she said. "It turns the fountain on, but the drain is dangerous." Randolph's oil-black eyes sparkled. "I'm not scared of anything," he snarled, as he squeezed his greasy body into the drain and disappeared into the dark. Marguerite and Benjamin waited. The stones of the cathedral waited. The fountain waited. Then there was a movement in the drain. Randolph slid out onto the ground. He was dirty and muddy and smelly, and he was shaking all over. "Monsters," he said. "Gurgling, dripping, monsters." He squirmed on the ground. His eyes flickered from side to side. "I can do this," Benjamin whispered. He took a long, deep breath and disappeared into the drain. Marguerite and Randolph waited. The stones of the cathedral waited. The fountain waited. At last, Benjamin stepped out of the drain. He was dirty and muddy and smelly, but his bright eyes were full of fire. "You are a coward," he said. "Your heart is as stony as the cathedral and as tiny as a single drop of water." "This is my fountain," Randolph said, his voice shaking. "No," said Benjamin. "This is Marguerite's fountain." Suddenly, the water started to gurgle and bubble. "Leave now," Benjamin said. "Leave the fountain, and leave the cathedral yard, and leave Marguerite alone." Randolph's mustache drooped. He looked at the fountain, at Benjamin, then at Marguerite. "I don't care about your silly fountain anyway," he muttered, and slowly slithered away into the shadows. Then something magical happened. The fountain burst into life. The water foamed and frothed and flew into the air higher and higher until it was as high as the highest steeple in the cathedral yard. Now everything is just as before. Almost everything. Marguerite still dances around the fountain. But now Benjamin dances with her.